Hello there, ladies and gentle people. It's time for a new astrology forecast video, and today we're going to talk about Mars's transit through Capricorn. Mars enters Capricorn on the 17th of March 2018 and will be there until the 15th of May 2018. 17th of March 2018, 15th of May 2018, Mars will be in Capricorn. What does this mean? First of all, we're going to talk about the implications on a social, collective level. And we're also going to afterwards touch upon some of the implications at an individual level. Now, when we talk about the implications at an individual level, I'm not going to go through all of the ascendant signs as I sometimes do in these videos. Instead, I'm going to give you a recipe to figure it out for yourself by looking at your charts and of course using the whole sign house system and the traditional lords. This is what I am going to give you. I'd rather teach you how to fish than to give you some ready-made fish fillets, okay? Or if you're a vegetarian, teach you how to grow a tree or whatever. Now, Mars in Capricorn. Capricorn is the sign of selectivity ruled by the planet of boundaries, which is Saturn. Mars is the planet of focus, of thrust, of energy exertion. Mars is exalted in Capricorn, right? Our focus, our expenditure of energy, our thrust, our action, our drive, our will is at its best when it's selective. When we select those things on which to apply ourselves, on which to focus, on which to spend energy. When we're selective and disciplined and orderly about those things. So Mars and Capricorn produce this dynamic of spending energy, of exerting oneself, but of being selective about how, right? Which is really good. That's why Mars is exalted in Capricorn. Now, this is overall good, okay? And I'm going to get to more of why it's good on a personal level, but on a world level, what it really means is that Mars gets a bit of a special kind of leeway in society, which can be good or bad. It depends what you're into or what we're talking about. So what does Mars mean in society? It means the energy power system, right? The grid itself is Mercury. The interconnected grid that provides us with energy, with electricity, is Mercury. But then the expenditure of that energy itself, that's Mars. So we may have... and again, Capricorn is about symmetry, so it's at a high level. There may be, for everything I'm talking about, there may be high-level political implications. There may be political decisions on consumption of energy. In some countries, in some places, depending where you're from, what the situation is there, there may be things moving in regards to energy, right? Something else that Mars rules is, of course, defense and military. Of course, we always say defense, but sometimes it's offense. You know how that goes. But, you know, the military, law enforcement as well. There may be a lot of political movements in and around the military. Now, Mars was in Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is the sign of the archer. There was a lot of talk about weapons. There was a lot of testing of weapons when Mars was in Sagittarius, right? Mars in the sign of the archer, you can imagine. The soldier with the bow and arrow. However, this is where Mars gets, you know, not as fiery as in Sagittarius, but Capricorn is an active sign and it's an earth sign. So it's going to be not as fired up as in Sagittarius, but more efficient. Mars is going to be more efficient in Capricorn. There were military offensives started with Mars in Sagittarius, just as I have predicted. So I have every reason to believe that I have a pretty good chance of being right on what I'm going to predict in this video for the next couple of months, okay? So if you're interested in geopolitics, which you definitely should at this time in our history, then pay attention to political actions within the military, political decisions for the military. political talk about the military. Huge decisions may be taken during this time. Huge decisions may be taken during this time. Plans adopted. If you're interested in this kind of thing, scrutinize those plans. Pay special attention to what's in them, what's being stated. It's going to be very important. Now, Mars is also in Capricorn, right? Mars is also in Capricorn, and Mars and Saturn is also in Capricorn, and Mars and Saturn are going to be conjunct on the 3rd of April 2018. Now, between the last days of March and the first week of April, that's when the Mars and Saturn conjunction closes in, and we will notice the effects of that, personally and on a collective level. Now, I would expect this to be quite telling on a society level of certain things. Now, you would want to pay attention to this period, because this is especially when such plans that I've spoken of before may be adopted. And if they are adopted, because we're talking about Saturn, and because Saturn is in its own sign, remember Saturn here is ruling the sign of Capricorn, and it's also ruling Mars. So even though Mars is exalted here, Saturn is commanding Mars. Saturn is commanding Mars, and then whenever you have Mars and Saturn in this kind of a layout, it always makes you think about the general and the soldier, right? Saturn and Mars in Capricorn. So there will be a lot around that. That's why I choose to focus on the military aspect of it, because with Saturn, with Capricorn, a lot of military decisions at a high level. Again, at the beginning of April, even the last few days of March, pay attention to political statements regarding the military. Okay, that's going to be very important. Long-term plans. And those long-term plans may even produce restrictions for some people, especially when it comes to, for example, taking money out of various social programs and injecting them into the military. That may happen as well. Now, military actions, quite possible. Disagreements at a high political level between countries. Those are going to spike during this time. But they're going to be more organized, right? With Mars and Sagittarius, it's like everyone saying whatever they feel like, just throwing statements out there. With Mars in Capricorn, they're going to be a bit more thought through, a bit more intelligent, right? Even scheming, let's say. Now, from the point of view of Saturn, when Mars conjuncts it, even though Saturn rules Mars in this instance, whenever Mars conjuncts Saturn, you can expect some exaggerated, fiery things to be put under a certain order and discipline, which again makes you think about the military or sports activity. We're going to get to that as well. But this conjunction also makes you think of breaking boundaries, breaking through boundaries. How good is this likely to be? Well, listen, if there are boundaries which need to be broken, we're talking at a collective level right now, restrictions that need to be broken through, that may happen now with Mars conjuncting Saturn and Capricorn, especially again at a political level, because when we're talking about Capricorn, we need to always think about the highest strata of society and the lowest, right? It's kind of extreme like that with Capricorn. If you look at the symbol for Capricorn, it's a sea goat. Now, the goat lives in some of the most rugged and dry terrains in the world. And of course, the sea creature lives in the ocean. So you have this extreme dynamic with Capricorn, right? The higher strata and the lowest strata. You may have prison breaks. You may have prison breaks with Mars conjuncting Saturn in Capricorn. So play around with this dynamic. You'll know what's going on in your environment, in your country, in your particular area of interest, and combine these. I'm kind of, not necessarily giving you something exact that will happen, but more so giving you the means to figure it out for yourself. That's what I'm trying to do. Now, another area that Mars controls is sports. Of course, there's the FIFA World Soccer Cup due this summer. I would expect Mars conjunct Saturn around the beginning of April to be some kind of a troublesome event regarding the preparations for this World Cup or other sports events that you may or may not be interested in. Now, we're done with the world level stuff. Let's talk about the individual. This is where you need to pull up your chart and have your chart drawn in whole sign house system and use the traditional lords. The houses that are ruled by Mars during this transit are going to benefit. You're going to be more disciplined and organized in dealing with these things. Your energy is going to be generally better spent. In the house of Capricorn in your chart, some blockages can be broken through around the beginning of April. You can make efforts to break through some limitations in regards to the things represented by the house of Capricorn in your chart and also the house of Aquarius. However, remember that boundaries are not always a bad thing. So boundaries may be broken, but they may also be infringed upon in regards to these houses. There may be some structure that could be tested. Some structure could be tested for better or worse. Structure can become our haven or our prison, our support or our imprisonment, okay, our confinement. This is both things that Saturn represents. So consider that. Houses that are ruled by Mars are generally going to benefit, but when Mars at the beginning of April, and I put emphasis on this because this Mars conjunct Saturn period is going to be quite important and telling for most of the rest of this year. We will have, I think there was a mosquito. The mosquitoes have come to life. I think we will have to pay attention to this period. Now, the houses of Mars, again, Aries and Scorpio, the houses of these signs in your chart and planets placed here will generally benefit, but when Mars conjunct Saturn, pay attention. They may be restricted. You may be in the process of heightening activity or starting activity, or you may have kicked off activity. You may have set a high goal for yourself. Let's put it this way. In the areas of Aries and Scorpio in your chart, you may have set some lofty goals for yourself with Mars transiting Sagittarius, and now when Mars goes into Capricorn, things are going to tell you, listen, hold up, you need to be more selective about this. You need to be more organized. Not everything that you were planning for is going to be as possible as you thought. You need to apply some boundaries. And if you're not already aware of that, when Mars conjunct Saturn, you will suddenly become aware that, hey, this is not as possible as you thought, and there are some limitations to these ideas, okay? If your ascendant is Aries, of course, that's in your 10th house, for example. If your ascendant is Aries, that's in your 10th house, for example, and this could be good. This could be quite good for you. You may get some positive results from efforts undergone in your career sector. But you may also face some conflict, especially with superiors, especially conflicts with superiors, right? So we're not going to go through, again, all of the works here, but just to kind of exemplify, starting from the Aries ascendant. So take the houses. Again, look at the house ruled by Mars in your chart. Look at the house ruled by Saturn in your chart. Combine these indications and think about it. Well, Mars is going to be an ambassador for the houses that it rules. It's going to be exalted. It's going to be limited by Saturn to a certain extent. Now, Saturn rules the house of Capricorn and Aquarius, and it's going to govern Mars. It's going to feel the heat of Mars, and it's probably not going to be very pleasant for the houses of especially for the house of Aquarius, because Capricorn, we still get an exalted Mars there. For your natal Saturn placement, it may not be very favorable in those areas either. Now, especially for those of you that are going through your Saturn return with Saturn in Capricorn, this may be a very telling period. This may be a very telling period, so pay attention to that. Now, this is all that I would like to talk to you about. If you want to, I know I'm kind of cutting it short. I feel that I haven't given you guys a whole lot, but sometimes I feel that I'm talking too much, and I need to remember that my main goal is to teach you guys astrology, not to give you everything on a platter, right? So I hope that you guys will explore further. We'll look into your chart. We'll look at some of the other things going on. Remember that when Mars conjuncts, very important, when Mars conjuncts Saturn in Capricorn, it will be square a retrograding Mercury in Aries. So again, this heightens all of the potential of disagreements and fired up exchanges, especially on a legal level, kind of a legal formal setting, okay? So this is kind of what enforces what I've been already talking about. And the sun will be exalted. Now, I'm going to touch upon the sun being exalted too, because that could be great for the areas ruled by sun in your chart and where sun is placed in your chart, as well as for the house of Aries. Now, you know, for the whole Aries season, especially the first few days, the sun is going to be exalted. You should feel that boost. This is all I have for you for today. Thank you very much for watching. Go in the link bio, subscribe, get the hybrid astrology course. It's the best course for astrology, the most efficient style of astrology that you can get in our current modern times. And if you want to book a session with me and have this time face-to-face for an hour, for half an hour, again, links will be in the bio. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and join me on the next video.